Welcome to Angloromani with Pricey. I'm Pricey, and this is the series where I look at the Angloromani paralanguage / dialect that I grew up with and sort of use that as a jumping off point to look at the culture that I grew up in, as well as the etymology of the words, and then through that lens look at moreover the history of the Romany people, or at least those that have migrated to the UK over time. In this episode, I am looking at verbs, and if you watched a previous video that I did on commands, you'll know how they act is very similar to how verbs are conjugated in English. With that being said, let's get on with it. So a very cut and dry one to start off with is kel. Kel is to do and to make, and I gotta say, I didn't really experience this one too much as I grew up. I knew it existed, but we just didn't tend to say it. Occasionally I might hear like my dad say it in a particular context, but it's not one I really have a strong sort of connection with. This one is again quite cut and dry in terms of where it came from. All of the words today, by the way, are going to have a link back to Sanskrit. The only thing that's really going to vary is what kind of route they took. And in the case of kel, this one goes back through Ashokan Prakrit to the Sanskrit word karati or karate. I'm always terrible with knowing how these words are pronounced, so if you know, then feel free to correct me, but it's like karate. And this one has also been traced further back to Proto-Indo-European. Interestingly, with this word, there are a lot of contemporary cousins across a wide variety of Indian languages like Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, etc. So before I made this video, I was struggling to think what I was going to make this particular video about. Feel free to mention in the comments, by the way, if there's something you want to see in particular, and I will try and do that for the next video. It gives me an idea of like where to jump off from. Luckily, no, I did come across a particular phrase while I was researching like a different word in a previous month, and that was what gave me the inspiration for this video. And that was when I came across a very old London slang term that originated with the British Army while they were stationed out in India, and this phrase being to have a deco. In other words, to have a look. And I thought to myself, well, deco, coming from India, knowing that a lot of the words that I used when I was growing up also come from India, I thought, this is too much of a coincidence. And indeed, when I looked into it, the word deco has a similar origin point to the Romany word dick, to look. To have a dick at something is to have a look at something. To dick is to look, to see, to watch, etc. Anything where you're basically using your eyes. Incidentally, I forgot to mention this word on my video of commands, because this is definitely one of those ones that can be used as a command, and my dad would have hissed through his teeth at me when he wanted me to look out for something, watch what I was doing, etc. Be like, dick. And as I said, I was only really reminded of this word when I was looking up another term, and I came across a particular website which I've linked in the description, and it's like a dictionary.com/word of the day entry from like 2018. Very interesting, because in that they laid it all out for me, so I was able to find that this word can be traced all the way back to Proto-Indo-European, with that being like dirk or something like that. Obviously it came to Romany through Sanskrit, but also it has a wide reaching impact on language, with words being found in Old German, or Ancient Greek, High German, Irish. Yeah, there's some really disparate cousins of the words dick and deco for that matter. One other thing that was kind of interesting, you can look at this in the thing, I'm not going to go into it too much, but this word also gave rise to the word dragon. very occasionally there will be a word that comes up in this series that is an absolute nightmare to research, and this was one of them. The word is Rokker. Rokker, funnily enough, is understood across, as far as I know, all British Romanis. If you Rokker, you're speaking. You Rokker to someone, you're talking to them. Like, you can ask a question of someone, you go and Rokker it. You know, Rokker is literally just anything where you're using your gob to like talk to someone for whatever context. It could be, you know, telling someone something, asking someone something, informing people, whatever. Just talking in general is Rokkering. And yet, this one was so difficult to find the origin of. It was basically nigh on impossible, but I've limited it down to 2 particularly strong theories, and then there's like a third one which I don't know where that's come from, but it comes from a credible source, so I'd love to be able to ask him one day. So the first theory as to the origin of the word Rokker comes from a quote in a book of 1926 by the linguist John Sampson, who is quoting another linguist, Franz Nikolaus Fink, who claims it came from a Sanskrit word prakaroti, meaning to put forward. If it ended there, I'd be very happy, except for I was not able to find anything to substantiate this or to cross-reference it with. So I have to, like, morally put across the other idea as well, just in case, or just, you know, for the sake of completionism. The other and slightly more contemporaneous view as to where the word Rokker comes from is really strange. Basically, there was another word for to speak, to talk, which was pennel. And this in turn came from Banadi, the Saraceni Prakrit version of the same meaning. And that was lost, but not before it had evolved into puka. And like I say, puka was lost, but there was this other word meaning tree, rook, which as far as I know might still be used. I'm gonna have to ask my dad if that's one that he is familiar with, because it's not, I feel like I've come across it, but not too personally myself. It may be that he said it and I've just sort of heard it in the background. But yeah, rook became Rokker, became Rokker, and it was just because they sort of sounded similar, puka and rook. And yeah, this, like I say, this is a very stringent line, but I wouldn't put it past the evolution of the Romany language generally. I've definitely seen weirder in this series. And then there's the third idea that I have not been able to find any evidence for, but it comes from Yaron Matras, who I've found to be a very reliable source, and that is the word vraka, which he claims to be a form of European Romany. I've no idea where he's got that one from. Speaking of words dying off and being replaced with something that's kind of similar sounding and similar in connotation, I guess, we have the next word, Muller. In my family, Muller is a verb. It's strictly a verb. He or she mullered, it meant they died. They're mullering, it means they're dying. They're going to muller, it means they're going to die. It's very much just die, like as a verb, and never as a noun. However, elsewhere in, it seems, Anglo-Romani and definitely in continental Romani, the verb to die is more or mer. Looking into this word a bit more, especially on the continental side of things, the word mullo or however you want to pronounce it seems to be attached to, I'm going to be careful about this, Romany folklore. Unless I experienced it myself, I'm always skeptical as to how much is actually Romany folklore or how much is folklore about Romanis or that Gorgias may have made up. So I'm you know, going cautious on this one. But the word mullo seems to be synonymous with vampire, or ghosts, or wraiths, or spirits of some other kind, but mostly vampires. Again, this is not something I've been able to find in Angloromani, as it happens, and this is very much a like Eastern European thing. Like I say, I'd be careful about this one until I know more about it myself. Now, once again, I'm gonna do my due diligence here and talk about the etymology for both words. Muller, the one that I grew up with, and more/mare, severely mare, the one that other Romany people across the UK and potentially Europe will know. So Muller comes from the Prakrit Muur, and it's combined with the Middle Indo-Aryan suffix la, and the first part of that word can be traced back to the Sanskrit murta, basically being the noun, again, not the verb, but the noun for dead in Sanskrit. While the word mer, on the other hand, can be traced back to the Romany meril, and then back to the Prakrit mare, and then back further to the Sanskrit marati, all of those being the verb to die. Another Anglo-Romani verb that is once again traceable to a Sanskrit noun is the verb trash, to scare, to terrify. And this is a very particular kind of fear. This isn't just like, oh, you're scared of like a stranger that's walking towards you and they're looking a bit like intimidating. No, this one is like when something has really put the willies in you. Something has spooked you, basically. I mean, like, you know, if you see a kid nearly get hit by a car, then you could say you're trashed from that, you know, or that trashed you. But yes, to trash is to spook, to terrify, to shake up somebody, you know, like to really make them fear for their life or somebody else's life. In terms of the etymology of this one was not easy to find once again. I was finding a lot of vague references pretty much everywhere to a European Romany word tras. But if you've watched previous videos in this series, you know that that isn't good enough for me, because I kind of need to know where the European Romany people got it from. There's usually some link back to a more established language, typically an Indian one or one that they've picked up elsewhere. And I was hitting dead ends and vague references, and it just kept taking me in a circle back to this same European Romany word. It wasn't until I happened across the French Wikipedia page for the Romany language and found that actually they've got quite an impressive database on that, and that the English language equivalent doesn't, and that shows you where all the words came from. Now I was able to trace this one back to the Sanskrit word trasa, and funnily enough, through that I found that it has a contemporary cousin in the Hindi word tras. And all of this, by the way, means fear or terror. It's basically a noun at some point that has become a verb. So looking as I do and sounding as I do, I pass well enough as a non-Romany. Now I can't sit here and pretend that I've faced all of the same persecutions that Romany people generally have faced. However, one stereotype that has affected me both directly and indirectly, sort of secondhand, with like the reputation of my family, for example, is that all Romanys are thieves. In this light, we are talking about the word chor, to steal. Now, I have come across thieves who are Romanys, but then for every one of those people that I've come across, there are at least, 20 or 30 others who aren't. And then there are people like my dad who view thieves, regardless, but especially Romany thieves, as a disgrace. Probably because it comes back on the community so strongly, actually. In keeping with the theme of this video generally, would you believe this one goes all the way back to Sanskrit, this time via Saraceni Prakrit, and the Sanskrit word was the origin point for chor was Chor. So not too dissimilar, but again, sticking to the theme of this video, this one didn't start off as a verb but rather a noun, and that noun means thief in both the Saraceni Prakrit and the Sanskrit. And with that, those are all, or at least most, of the remaining verbs that I could think of. I may end up doing a part 2 if more come to mind, or if my dad mentions some that I completely forgot about when I later talk to him about this. But yeah, feel free to tell me your thoughts on any of these, as well as like fill in any blank spaces that I may have left behind, and let me know about your experiences of these words or anything that you found interesting. Also, let me know, like I say, of any other topics you'd like me to cover in future videos in this series, and that will give me a nice jumping off point. And feel free to look at the rest of the channel for more of this, as well as retro gaming and sort of other music discussion or whatever else I happen to be waffling about. And until next time, have a good one.